I'm Barnabas. I'm from Austria, and I tried a lot of programming languages, but I didn't ship stuff with all of them, so might not be as impressive. I'm from Austria, and I live there with my dog, and the nature is pretty nice there. And I'm going to talk about a bit of the story, how we at our company switched our backend from Node to Elixir, or are still in the process of doing that. And first, let's see what all is going to be in there. First, I'm going to show you how the system was before and why we decided to switch. And then I'm going to show you the way we did it and the steps we took to get there. Okay, now I can see better. So I joined the company about two years ago, and they built a back office application for a travel agency, and they did it using Nest.js for the backend and Next.js for the front end. And by the time I started working there, it was already very slow, and like the startup time was really bad because Nest.js query, it did the whole schema generation during startup, and sometimes we had to deploy like 5 times in a row, and just to get like one lucky deploy where it wouldn't time out. And the backend also, we had end-to-end tests, and they were also very slow. They ate up all our minutes in the GitHub CI, and then we tried to create our own GitHub runner and ran them there, but they also took like 12 hours there, so we kind of said, I don't know, we want something new. And then some of the times when you added stuff, Nest.js would give you some kind of cryptic cyclic dependency errors that were very hard to debug. And that was the status quo, and we said, yeah, instead of building the new stuff, or like this is the next thing, we were at the point where the backend application was in a pretty good state and they could do all their work. And the next step would be a public-facing app where the customers could see their travel documents as the first step, and then we would also add self-booking functionality so they could book hotels on their own. And we saw this as an opportunity to say, okay, we built this on a new stack, and there were like, now that it's public-facing with the backend application, you know, okay, we have like 20 employees in the back office, and there's going to be this much traffic, and it's really predictable. But now with the self-booking and everything, and it's public to everyone, that there's going to be a lot more traffic, and the Beam is a great platform to handle that traffic. And we are only 3 people, and the 2 guys, like the other guy that's also doing backend work, he also likes Elixir, so we said, let's go for it. And that's what we did. So what we started with is we used the same Postgres database, and the Node server would still write all the stuff that the travel designers do into the database, and we would just expose that with our Elixir backend to the customers. So we started just writing resources that would mirror the tables in the database pretty much. And what you do is, for you it's on the left, I guess, no, on the right. You would start with defining your module. That's the resource. Then you use ash.resource to declare it as a resource, I guess. And then there are a couple options. The domain is pretty new. It's from the 3.0 release. Every resource is connected to a domain, and the domain also has some shared settings, for example, like authorization stuff that would be enforced every time you call an action on the resource. Then you specify data layer, and we use Postgres. In this case, this is also like the go-to data layer. There are a couple more. And for the extension, we chose Ash GraphQL to connect this all to our React frontend. Then you started with just adding all the attributes to mirror the state in the database. And you can see that on the left side, it's pretty easy. Everyone can pretty much do it. You just go in there, write all the attributes, and you're done. Then for the Postgres stuff, you also need a little bit of configuration. You just tell it which repo to use, and this uses Ecto under the hood, and which table in the database you store your data in. Then you can also define relationships to connect your tables together. And last but not least, like pretty much the most important stuff, are the actions. And we started with just the read actions, so we could expose the data to the customers. And for the read action, there is, like, you can have defaults, and they give you just the standard actions, CRUD-like actions, and then you can go deeper and customize them if you need to, or you should, probably. And then after you're done with that, you just say GraphQL, give it a type name, and expose some queries. And this gives you the whole GraphQL schema, and you can have the GraphQL playground. It's all using AppSynth under the hood. And you get these endpoints, and what it also gives you is the capability to filter and sort this on all of the attributes that you have defined. And after that, before we could really expose it, we had to add authorization. And at the time that we started, there was no Ash authentication, so we chose POW to do this. But this was also fairly easy. We just did the normal stuff that POW had in their guide. And then we used the plug to put the current user into the context. And from that on out, Ash GraphQL now knows how to get it and passed it to all of the actions, so you can do authorizations. On the resource, you have to add the policy authorizer. And after you've done that, you can add these policy blocks to the resource that make sure that these rules are enforced when you call an action. So in this case, the nice thing is you can also add, you cannot just do simple stuff like there is an actor or not. You can add filters like here, where we filter for the custom ID. And this way, if you do a query, this is automatically added to the SQL, and you only get the resources that you are allowed to read. And after we've done that, we started with importing inventory for the self-booking. And at the time, there were no book actions in Ash, so we just used regular actor stuff. And you can still do that. All of the resources define a actor schema. And you can use that to just do regular actor queries and manipulations. And we used insert all with the upsert, and nowadays you can just do that with ash.bulkcreate, and it handles pretty much the same stuff under the hood for you. And you can see the options are named a bit differently, but I think it's pretty clear what they are doing. And afterwards, after we had all the hotels imported into our database, we had to make them searchable. And because there were not that many, and Postgres was already there, we decided to just use Postgres full-text search. And this also shows that even if it's stuff that's not built in to the framework by default, there are these escape hatches or stuff that you can do to just do regular SQL. And the migration generator then takes these things and put them into the migration, and you can just use, it's just a regular actor migration by that point. You do it, and it's there in the database. And then on the other side, you can see the fragment, the calculation, and calculations are values that you can calculate from stuff that is in the database. You can just add these expressions. And here we use a fragment to do some custom SQL, but you could also just, for example, add some values together that are already on the resource, or use some kind of aggregates to get the minimum date of a booking or something like that. And then you can call this in a filter. If the calculation uses expressions, it can be handed down to the data layer, and you can use it in sort and filter stuff on the queries too, which is pretty powerful. And we use this to make all the hotel searchables for the customers, and it works really great. Then after we did that, we also had to add some external services, and for the whole booking stuff, we added to the site Stripe for the payments. And this is also an example of how you would add other actions to your resource. Inside of the actions block, you just do add this new create action, and there are reads, updates, creates, and destroy. And those are the generic categories that of actions that are there. And then you just specify small actions that do specific stuff to encapsulate your logic. And here we created a new booking, and you can see that we accept only 2 of the attributes of the resource and 2 arguments that are not part of the resource, but that we need to create a session with Stripe. And instead of just doing the built-in action that would persist the data to the database, we call it a manual action in this case, where we use the Stripe client to retrieve a new session and then call another create action internally that persists the data that we needed into the database. And there are, this is one way to do custom stuff in your actions, and all the actions they have a specific life cycle, and there are multiple hooks in pretty much every state of the life cycle we can hook into and add or override the logic. So this is another example for custom action. Here we have an update, and the update doesn't actually accept any of the attributes. It just takes one custom argument, and then we validate the resource that it's in a valid state for the action. Then you can add changes, and changes are, this works similar in a way to how you build up your Ecto stuff with casting. Here you build up a change set and then give it to Ash, and it does all the logic inside and persists it. And changes accept offer would be a custom change that you put into a different module that implements a specific behavior, and a callback is called, and it would manipulate the attributes on the resource and then persist it into the database. And here we also use another custom action that called run action with OBAN, and this one adds an after action hook that inserts OBAN job into the database if the action was successful. And we use this to cross domain boundaries without having all the stuff being done synchronously. And this works also pretty well so far. And then the next, a bit more advanced topic are extensions. And there are 2 big parts to Ash. One is during compile time, where Spark is the underlying library that does all the compile time stuff. And it takes the DSL that you have in your resource and creates this data structure. And this also, I think, where some people think there's a lot of magic, but it's not as much as you might think, because there's not a lot of code generated during compile time. It's mostly just putting all the stuff that you have in your DSL into the data structure, and then the code that is in the Ash library knows how to work with it. So you can inspect pretty much all the code just as you would regularly do, and there is no big macro stuff that you can't really inspect beforehand. And there's an example here. All the resources after compile time have this Spark DSL config, and on the left side there's just the top level stuff, and on the right side there are the keys, and here you can see these are like the sections that you would have in your resource, like actions, aggregates, attributes. The GraphQL stuff, we saw those before when I showed the resources that we defined. And after the DSL state is created, this also runs through a series of transformers. and they can manipulate the DSL state or validate them, for example, and that's also a way that Ash gives you some more checks than just what the regular compiler does by checking your types during this transforming, and gives you a couple of nice error messages. So this is an example of a small, or how you would write a small extension yourself. What they did in the node world is they had these updated create date timestamps and attributes where it would take the ID of the actor and would put it there so you could see who touched the resource the last time. And what you do is you create this DSL section, and this gives you all the stuff that you then can add to your resource. So after you would add these extension to your resource, you would be able to add audit block with these options, timestamps, and actors, where you could, in this case, just say you want it or you don't want it. And then after that, you write the transformer, and in the transformer you get your DSL state, and in the DSL state are the options that you put into the schema, and then you can look at it and you could decide okay, he decided he doesn't want it and to just skip that step. But if he wants to do it, you just use Spark functions to add, in this case, a regular change to the resource. And we saw the change before in the action, where it said change accept offer. And there are function level changes or action level changes where you put it just on the action, but you can also have resource level changes where you say, okay, this change should always run on create actions or on update actions. And that's what you see on the left side, where we add a change that runs on every create action and then sets the created by attribute on the resource. And and then there's also the before and after hooks, where you can specify that this transformer needs to run before or after another transformer. Here it says before Ash RBAC the policies, and that's because Ash RBAC needs to know about all the attributes that are on the resource to do its job. So we just said, okay, we need to do this before to add all the attributes before the other transformer runs. And then after you've done this, you just take the section that you specified, say it's a Spark DSL extension by using the module, tell it which transformer to run on the DSL state, and add this action. And this also, Spark also produces documentation for Xdoc with the descriptions and stuff that you add to your section. You can also see that with the hex docs for Ash, where you have the DSL docs, where you can look at all the options and see what they do. And there is another small extension that we made at our company, and it's open source. And it makes adding policies a little bit easier for us. Instead of writing the policies in the normal way, this way we can just specify a role and specify the fields that the role has access to, as well as the actions that the role can execute. And this, in a way, it's also really small, because it's just taking the DSL state and adding the policies like you would otherwise have to do it by hand, and there's no runtime component to it. So in this case, it would add field policies, and field policies give access to specific fields on a resource, and the normal policies which make sure only certain people can execute actions. So it's very powerful because you have the normal action policies and also the field level stuff. And then there are some other nice to have that you get when using Ash that are code interfaces, for example. And now in 3.0, the default is to add your code interfaces to your domain module, where you can just specify, okay, you list all your resources that belong to the domain in the domain as well. and then you can just say define open ticket, for example, and that will create a function on the domain that would take, in this case, the argument subject and a couple of options. All the generated actions, functions, they support bulk actions as well as regular actions, and you can see that in the options that you can pass into the functions. And you can also do age and pass the generated function, and there you will see the documentation for it in IEX, for example. The old way to do this was to add a code interface to the resource. You can still do that if you want to, and it will also be supported going forward. And that would add functions to the resource module. And it also always creates the standard one and the bang version, and you can choose whatever you want in whatever case you're doing. And the other thing is you can create this base resource if you have a couple of extensions that you always want to use, and add the using macro, and you just use that, and you always have the extension, so you don't have to think about it. And the way Ash works, you have a couple of things like changes, validations, resources, and if you follow that, you also get like this folder structure where you don't really have to think too hard about where to put your stuff, so that's also pretty nice to have. And then the community support is really great. We switched to having the Elixir forum be a big part of it half a year ago or so, and now there is a specific section just for Ash inside of the forum where you can go and ask questions. And you can also join the Discord server and ask questions there if you want. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
Question?
Thank you for the presentation. Did you start with Ash from the very beginning, or did you try to do it the old way? And can you compare what was better, what is better now?
We evaluated a couple of things when we started working on this. Both I and the other guy at my company that wanted to do Elixir, we only did it in a free time before, so this was actually the first like day job stuff that we did in Elixir. But we looked at just doing it with regular Phoenix, or also we looked at commanded, but then thought commanded was a bit too much at the moment and would be too much of a learning curve. And we thought about just doing the regular Phoenix and Phoenix context stuff. But like one thing was the Ash Discord was one major component of us really going with Ash at the time, because Zach is like really responsive there and helped us out a lot. And the big thing is like the whole filtering stuff, for example. If you have to, I mean, there are libraries that help you to generate filters and sorting and whatever for your libraries. For your endpoints, but here you just get it for free, and this was, for us, with only 3 people, it was a major pro just to save time, yeah. And we didn't really ever hit a major roadblock. If there was something that we couldn't do, like the example with the bulk actions, there was always a way to just get around it and do whatever we needed to do, also with the hooks. So, yeah, worked really well.
We still have time for a couple. We're there. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, could you let me know a little bit more about your company and the work that you do?
Okay.
I'm not very familiar with it.
Yeah, kind of skipped over that part a little bit at the beginning. We are, now we are 4 people, but only 3 engineers. And we have a cooperation with a travel agency in Cologne. And we build all the software for them. Before they started the cooperation, they did most of their stuff in Excel. And the colleagues that worked there before me, or they still work there, but they started before me. They built the whole backend of application for them to just make the progress of writing the offers, doing the invoicing and everything in a digital format, so they could scale the business.
Thank you for your field notes. Say you would onboard a new developer, how would you tackle this? Would you start with Ash, top down, or would you do it the other way around?
I think it kind of depends. I think you can start with just Ash. Like we have one guy that only does front-end development, but just with how the resources are built, he can go in and read the DSL, and if he just needs to add an attribute or does some simple stuff, he can add that because it's pretty much just English. So, but if you have to go a bit deeper and write your own, I mean, you can still do a lot of stuff with just the built-in changes, but as soon as you need to do more custom stuff and do lifecycle hooks, you have to be able to write Elixir. Yeah, but I think a basis knowledge of Elixir is pretty useful, but I don't think you have to be that efficient or experienced in Elixir to pick up Ash.